Hey there, this is Katherine Cartwright. Welcome to ScrapbookPal. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the like button. And thanks for joining me today. I'm going to be using a My Favorite Things stamp set. This is called Fairy Tale Friendship. We've got an adorable castle, some princesses, a dragon, and then here are the coordinating dies I'm going to be using as well. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be making a Slimline card today. I'm also going to be pulling out a couple of these stencils from My Favorite Things. This is called Drifts and Hills, and then the Cloud Edger. So both of these would be wonderful to create any kind of scene that you need. So I'm going to begin with the clouds. I've got a couple of distress inks here. I'm going to be using Tumbled Glass, which is the lighter color, and then Broken China, which is a little bit darker. And I'm going to start with that lightest color first, and then my second layer will have a little bit of a darker shade. And I'm just turning my stencil around to get a different kind of set of clouds, so to speak, just to add some interest and some variation in my scene. So let me finish blending this on here, and then I will turn that stencil around one more time to finish off the top of my cloud scape, so to speak. Okay, so I've got the lightest color back again, that is Tumbled Glass, and I'm just going to ink blend that on there, and this part will be finished. All right, now I can move on to my hills. So this is, you could use for snowy scenes. You know, you could make your drifts, the snow drifts with this. I'm going to be using this to create some hills. And I'm using Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn. Mowed Lawn is the darker color. And then I'm going to come back here with the Twisted Citron. I'm going to add a couple of layers to finish off the bottom of my scene. And I love Twisted Citron, and it's such a beautiful green. And it just adds such interest to your cards. So there you can see my finished drifts. And now I am going to move on to coloring. Got a good bit of coloring to do today. I'm using some Y colors, and I've gone ahead, and they'll be in the description, but I've also added them into the video so you can see which ones I'm using. So this is 06 and 18. I'm just doing a very quick blend there of those two colors. I've got a B group here. And the way I like to do these smaller images, I start with my lighter color, and then I will come back and add a little bit of shading on the sides, just where I think it might be. I don't spend too much time worrying about the shadows. With these small images, I think they just kind of take care of themselves with the darkness and the shadows. So I'm just going to add a little bit of darkness in the middle of her dress, where I think the fabric maybe would kind of be folding in. She's got her little coat on top, and then I'm going to move on to the next little princess here using some pinks. I've got some RV13 and RV04. And again, these some of these little details are very small. So I'm just adding a tiny little line here, and I'm letting my Copic markers do the work for me. I tend to be a little bit impatient with coloring, and so I like to just leave them and come back to them. Sometimes I'll need to add a little bit more detail, but I have to just be patient and let those colors blend together the way that they are created to do. So I'm going to be using some of the same tones to create the hat, and then I'm going to move on to the dragon here. I'm using a YG06. I'm just coloring his whole body, at least the top part, and then I'm going to come back in and blend in a little bit of a darker green. I've got G14 here. I'm putting it on the bottom, and then I'll add a little tiny bit at the top. I love all the detail of this stamp. It's so cute. His sweet little eyes and his little hands. And then I'm going to come back with the YG06 and blend those together. I've got to add a little bit of a shadow here with the G05. I'm just running a very fine line along there and on the top and the bottom, and then I will work on his scales. So these are just fun images to color, and they don't take too much time. So for his little scales, I'm just choosing that lightest green here. because it is so small, and I'm just adding that little bit of color in there and that little bit of detail. For the wings, I will start with the lightest color, and then I'm going to flick in my next darkest color and then the final one to add a little bit of detail on there. And then I'll finish off by adding a very light color onto that yellow. So there's a little bit of a kind of highlight in there. I'm going to use that same YG06 to color his arms and legs, keeping them just one shade here. And then I'm going to switch to a YG23 and 25 to color his belly. And I'm just flicking those colors into each other. I've left a little bit of a highlight there. I will cover that up, but once it dries, it will have a little bit of that lightness there, just from where the colors barely touched each other. And then I'm going to come back here and do a little bit of a cleanup. I came out of the line pretty good on his belly, so I wanted to go ahead and fix that. All right, so now I'm doing a quick blend of the hair. This is Y6, 18, and 38. This is the way that I like to do hair. I like to flick from the top to the middle and leave that little bit of highlight there and then fill that back in. And I kind of add some little streaks here using the 3 colors. I've been doing hair like this for a while. I learned this in a book years ago and fell in love with the technique. So I just wanted to share that with you today. So I've put that lighter color, the EO2, and then I'm adding in the R89. And you can see it looks a little strange at first, the first time you kind of do it this way, but I love the result because you get these great highlights. And then I'm going to come and flick in the darkest color, just barely putting down the marker and trying to make little flick lines here to add a little bit of that 3rd color. And then I will come back here and blend that EO2 in there. And I've got a little bit too much of a highlight there, so I want to close that kind of gap up a little bit. And then for the last hair, I'm using B41 for my highlight. And then I will come back in with my darker colors. I've got C7 and C9. Again, flicking those colors into that highlight and then adding that little bit of that darker shade. I'm just going to keep her little pigtails there, that C7, and then I will come back with the C9 and flick in that detail. And again, blending back in that B41 just to smooth that out. And I love the result. And these cute little princesses are adorable. So now I'm going to move on to the faces and coloring the skin. I've got E00 on this first princess, and then I'm going to come in with E93 going around. I'm going to make the legs a little darker, so I'll put that E93 on the legs. And then I've got V12 here. I'll come back and blend in the E00 and again let that marker do its work. My next group is going to be E13, E35, and V17. I will put the E35 on the legs, making the legs just a little bit darker so you can see them. These like I say, the details are very fine, and so I'm going to add a little bit of darkness on the legs so you can really see them. And then after adding that V, I will come back and blend in the E. Okay, this last group is E53, E55, and E57. And I will blend that last little color in, the E57, just taking care to add just a tiny bit of shadow so I don't overpower the image. And then I'm going to blend it back in with my first lightest color. Now I need to take a second here and work on this crown. We've got a couple of crowns here. I'm using some V's, V17 there and V12 to just create a little bit of interest on that little tiny crown, and then pulling out those similar pinks, the RV13, to finish that one off. Okay, so now I'm going to finish some details on here. I noticed I had a couple of shoes that I missed. And then I am going to come back again with my colorless blender since I'm all done coloring and making sure to clean up any area that I may have come out of the line. and I can die cut those off camera, but I'm going to go ahead and work on my castle here. I'm using cool grays for the whole castle. I decided to keep my castle a neutral color instead of making it like a pink or a blue or a red, because I've got a lot of other colorful images going on, and then I also have that scene that I created. So I didn't want to overpower it with another very colorful element. So I just decided to keep it a gray to kind of ground my card. And you'll see I'm just using different shades of the sea. I love to color with gray. It's one of my favorite blending groups. I think it just blends so easily and it adds so much detail to your cards. So I'm working on my towers here. I'm going to have those two smaller towers in the back. I'm going to make them the darkest ones. I just kind of think when you would ride up to a castle, you would see those larger ones in the front would be a little bit lighter, and then the ones in the back would be a little bit darker because they're kind of set back from the road, so to speak. So I'm using the C1 and C2 a lot here in my towers, and then I'm going to use those darker colors, the 4 and the 5, to add some detail. I'm keeping the front pretty light, and then I will color my sort of drawbridge door a C1, and then I'm going to end up making my door a little bit darker. I've got a 2 and a 3 here to add that little bit of shadow there, and I would think the door would be a little bit darker as well. So I'm going to finish up these other 2 towers here, and then I can work on my roof line, so to speak, the tops of those towers. And I've got C1 here and C2 to color my stones and to add a little bit of shading there. Okay, and now I'm going to go to the top. I'm going to make that a little bit darker just for a little contrast. And then I'm going to come in here with my C3 and I'm going to darken that up as well. So again, the castle is just so sweet, and you can make it any color you wanted to as well. You don't have to go with gray. I just, like I say, I wanted to keep it pretty neutral for this card. And I encourage you to, if you have some grays, to blend with them. They're fun, and it gives you a lot of variation, and it ends up being a beautiful color. All right, and now I'm going to finish off my flags. I'm pulling out 3 of the similar tones that I used, the yellow, blue, and the pink, to finish off that. All right, so we've got our scene ready. I have gone ahead and die cut all of the elements that I am going to use. They are so sweet. I have created a card base here. My finished card base is going to be 3.5 by 8.5 for my Slimline. And then I also there are some little dies in the set that to me look like they could be clouds or they could be shrubbery. So I decided to use them as both just by changing up the paper. So I used some green cardstock to create a couple of shrubs that I'm going to use to ground that castle. And then I used some glitter paper from my stash, the silver glitter paper, to create a few extra clouds to add a little bit more interest. And I'm just working on laying all of this out. I have gone ahead and stamped and cut the sentiment. She didn't need a prince, and she became best friends with the dragon. The end. And I'm going to glue that sentiment down first because it's a little bit larger, and I want to make sure that it has plenty of room for the card before I add the rest of these elements. I am going to add the shrubbery first so I can get my dragon and my castle placed exactly where I want it to be. And I have added some foam tape to those, but I'm going to very gently put them on. I don't want them to stick too hard, and I will push that down at the very end. I'm just kind of doing a very light placement here in case I need to move some things around. I'm going to slide that little shrub behind there, and then I can work on placing the rest of my little princesses. And I've got that third one to my left, and then I can't forget my clouds. And so when I'm happy with where everything needs to be, I can come back here and push everything down. So again, The card base, finished card base, is 3.5 by 8.5. You can make a slimline. There's several different variations of sizes of slimlines. This is just the size that I tend to use. And I'm going to add that to that kind of blue cardstock, pulling in some of the shades that I used in the background and in the little dresses and the hat. And there we go. How fun. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for stopping by. Again, don't forget to subscribe. There's so much great content over here at ScrapbookPal. I enjoyed being with you, and I can't wait to see you next time. Have a great day and happy crafting.